Bréfabók skáldsaga eftir Mikhail Siskin sem rússneskur höfundur. Hún þýdd af Áslaugu Agnarsdóttur, var að koma út og þetta skáldsaga með dálítið kosmískt þema. Mikhail Siskin, welcome to Killian. This is the first book by you that is translated into Icelandic, and you can say it has a very broad theme. It spans both time and space.
It is a book about time, yes, I would agree, but it is a book about real time, because we all live in a false time. I call this time the time for journalists, because everything what they consider is important today, tomorrow is in the newspaper of yesterday. And the newspaper of yesterday is just the symbol of death. And the writers have the privilege to take what is real important from this false time and to take it into the real time and real space where there is no death. And this is the time actually of the art. That is what is the art about. I compare it always with the music. It's much easier to understand. When I'm listening to the immortal music, for example, of Rachmaninoff, of my favorite Russian composer, at this moment, I'm becoming a little bit immortal too. That is why we need the art. Only the art can do this. If I read, I don't know, Anna Karenina or War and Peace, these immortal sentences, as a reader, I'm getting immortal too a little bit. That is why we go to the concert to listen to music. That is why we read the books. And my characters, Sasha and Volodya, Adam and Eve, they start in this false time, but they show how to get into the real time. And so maybe they correspond the right love letters from different epochs, but in reality, they understand each other because they are in that real, the only real space and time where everybody can understand everybody.
I have to admit that we are not very knowledgeable about modern Russian literature in this country, but you have received, I understand, the major prizes for fiction in Russia.
No, it's not my fault, so I just wrote the books. Yes, I got all three, as the only Russian writer, I got all three main literary prizes in Russia. But I think it's very important for every writer to get all the prizes, because only after you get it, only after that, you can realize to get a prize is absolutely not important.
No.
You see, important are just two prizes, but no jury could give these prizes to the writer. The first prize is when somebody gives you the possibility to start the novel, and the second prize, if the same person or creature or God, I don't know who is it, gives you the possibility to end this novel, to write this novel to the end. And I wish all writers these two main prizes.
But you seem to be think that like fiction art is very important.
You see, to tell the truth, in the last time, in the last months, I feel as a writer absolutely helpless. I understand what the German writers feel in the late 30s, when they realized that their books couldn't help, their books couldn't stop their people following the Führer into the catastrophe. And I feel this absolutely bad, horrible feeling of helplessness now as a writer in Russia, because the best Russian writers, Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, Chekhov, they couldn't help people now follow our new Führer, into this war with the Ukrainian. So no book actually stopped a war. Even the Bible couldn't stop any war. So what to say about our books? But I think it's very important not to keep silent, because if you keep silent, it means you support this war.
But you have been very critical of Putin's regime, and he is a dictator in your mind.
You see, they control the people with the propaganda, with the television. And for people, it's very important to get the information. Yeah? And if they have this brainwashing just for months and years, yeah, this propaganda machine created the medieval world in the brains, in the minds of the Russian population. We are again an island, a holy Russia, surrounded by the ocean of enemies. The main enemy is the United States, the devil. The only task of the devil is just to destroy Russia. And Europe helps, yeah, the United States to destroy Russia.
But it's strange that you see a part of the left and the right in Europe actually sympathizing with Putin and sympathizing with his policies in the Ukraine.
Putin is playing his game. He realized after Maidan, after Yanukovych had to go, that if the Ukrainian would really come to the European values, will flourish, will be a part of Europe, it will be just the sign for the Russian population to follow the Ukrainian. So and it would be the end of the dictator. He can't retreat as a normal person. If he retreats, it means he has no power anymore to be in the Kremlin. He goes to the prison. So, and for him now, this war against the Ukrainian is this war for his life. Now we are isolated. We don't produce anything. Yeah, we have sanctions. What was it for? So he can't afford himself to stop this war. Yeah. And I think it was very mean from his propaganda machine to create this enemy. You see, every dictatorship has just one recipe, to create the enemy and to start the war.
Yeah.
But he chose as an enemy the brother people, yeah, the Ukrainians.
Yes.
So now people in Russia think they are fascists. We are fighting against fascism as our parents and as our grandparents did during the Second World War. It's always good to fight the fascism. So we are good, we are anti-fascists.
That's the huge lie.
So I think it's not easy for people in Russia now to understand that they are not anti-fascists, but that they are fascists.
You yourself, you live in Switzerland, you don't live in Russia anymore.
I live between Russia and Switzerland, so 3 years ago I married a Moscow woman, and we spent 1 year in Moscow, then 1 year in Berlin. Now we live in Switzerland. And I remember it was a wonderful time, 2011. 100,000 or 150,000 people went on the streets of Moscow protesting against the falsified elections. Yeah. It was the time of hopes. Yeah. It was the hope that the Kremlin would start the dialogue with the society. No dialogue, nothing. And I'm afraid most people who participated at that time, 3 years ago, at these protest meetings and demonstrations, they had to leave Russia. They had to immigrate.
So you're not going back to Russia anywhere soon?
I think it's my country.
Yeah.
He's just occupied by this regime. But you see, the history knows, yeah? All dictators come and go, but the readers and the books stay. Yeah? And for me, it's very important to go to my Russia, and not only to Moscow, but also to the province where real Russia is. Last winter, I was in Moscow and Nizhny Novgorod. Now, in a couple of days, I'm going to Krasnoyarsk, to a book fair. let us see what will happen. Last winter, I was just the regime critic. Yeah, it was okay. But after all the events in the Ukrainian, you know the famous speech by Mr. Putin when he upgraded all the critics of the regime to the national traitor. Yeah. So now I'm coming as a national traitor to Krasnoyarsk. Let us see what will happen.
I don't think they will be happy about your Guardian article.
You see, what can I do as a writer? Yeah, just not keep silent. I just say what I think. Otherwise, if I keep silent, if I don't write such articles, it means that I support the regime.
But you still write your fiction, and that's sort of...
You see, as a writer, I will never mention some politicians like Putin in my prose.
No.
Yeah, too much honor for them. But as a citizen, yeah, I can't keep silent. I must do something for my country. It's just impossible now to struggle against Putin. It's impossible. We have just to wait.
Yes.
It's the same as German writers during the Second World War. What could they do? Just wait. Just wait, and after that, the Germans started to read books again.
So, Mikhail Shishkin, thank you for coming to this program.
Thank you very much.